Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Economic Truth Report number 22. And today we're going to go into a lot of crazy stuff. I haven't done one in a month or so, so get ready for a lot of a lot of chaos. That's been going on, especially in December in markets and geopolitics, in COVID-19 dangerous things. So I think we should, just get into it. And as we always do, we're going to go into markets and see where they're at. We're going to do a little bit of a year-end review on top of the regular monthly review that we do. So stay tuned here, and we're going to have lots of fun. We're going to, try to not say too many bad things about, things, but we'll see where we end up when things are over. So yeah, let's get ready here, guys, and let me start sharing my screen with you, my friends. And yeah, we're gonna start, of course, with the markets. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at what's going on here. And we always start with currencies, and then we're gonna go down from there and see what's going on. So let's go year-over-year measure and see what has been happening. As you can see here, let's see if we can, no, let's do this. So like there's some here, the ones that are positive, you could see that they're US dollar too. And then the negative ones are 2 US dollars. So both of these have lost in comparison to each other. So let's go into it. Okay, so the worst performing currencies against the US dollar has been the Turkish lira. No surprise there. We're going to go into a little bit about what's going on in Turkey right now. Some opportunities during a crisis to implement something. And then we got the Pakistani rupee is also, as you can see, year over year, it's dropped quite drastically to the US dollar, lost a lot. This shows positive, which is hilarious. It's lost the Hungarian forint, actually the Swedish krona, the Norwegian krona, and the Israeli shekel has lost a lot. The US dollar to the Japanese yen has lost a bunch as well. We got in the Indian rupee has lost a bunch. You got the Polish zloty. Then this, of course, the dollar index. Two other currencies. So you can see, like, if you go and look at it, it was at a peak around in September. Of course, we reported on this. I thought it would go higher, but it seems like it's taking a break and waiting maybe until some higher inflation are going to start to hit markets, and then boom, it goes, back and start to really go into a tailspin. Other than that, what else is on here? The rand in South Africa, the Korean won, Danish krona, Canadian dollar, Chinese yuan. Everybody's lost to the dollar, except for the Singaporean dollar has kept itself. The ruble, the Brazilian real has stayed stronger. Mexican peso has survived, and then these all have lost because they're just opposite pairs to dollar, like the pound, the New Zealand dollar, the Australian dollar, and the euro. Okay, back to Europe. Let's quickly go to Europe. We saw most of them there. Yeah, the hryvnia in Ukraine has drastically lost its value, as you can see. Moldovan, what is that? Moldova has, is it lek maybe, or oh, leu. Yeah, it's called leu. I don't know how to pronounce that properly. Yeah, as you can see here, you got others 7% and so on year over year. What else? Even the Swiss franc is lost here. Yeah, these are again different, like opposite pairs, so it shows as negative, but it's really a loss. So this is actually a loss. This should be a loss. Let's look at North America quickly here. Of course, the worst performing currencies, no doubt. Again, On top is the Venezuelan bolivar. And as you can see here, let's go quickly and look at the bolivar. It's since the implementation of the soberano now, let's see here. Yeah, as you can see here, what is the old time? When did it start here? Yeah, it started in, I think 2017 was when the first hyperinflation was. The um, Bolas Fuerte collapsed, and then you had of course, the collapse of the okay, so back to currencies. I think we missed a little bit here. So yeah, I went through the currencies. You lost me there a bit, and what we're seeing is, as you can see here, you can see the currencies. We show them here, the losers and the winners. Like lots of losers here, as you can see, to the US dollar. The US dollar is not just necessarily strong. It has a huge inflation. Like the unofficial number, probably the real number is more 15, 16% loss in purchasing power. So that's pretty huge. Now, of course, these are the Venezuelan bolivar as we showed you here. Now, I have beside me here. See if we can just quickly stop the share, and I'll show you here. This one here, right here, you can see that it says 100 and 100 on both of these. This one here was the old Fuerte. It collapsed. And this was the peak, actually. This is the highest issuance of that currency, which was 100,000 in units. The other one was now currently is this one, shows 100 bolivars. Uh, that's great. But is there 100 bolivars? No, it's not, because they took away the zeros on these. Like there's a class from 2, I believe it's, is it 1? Yeah, I think it might be 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, and 100 bolivars, but it's actually a million bolivars, somberanos, which is the new currency, which is very interesting. So yeah, let's go back here and show you some more. We're going to show you some clips and everything too, as well, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, as you can see here, the Argentinian peso, horrendous performance to the US dollar that also lost value. You have the Haitian, what is that? Gordi has lost a tremendous amount of value as well. Same with the Suriname dollar. The Colombian peso has lost a very huge amount as well to the US dollar. Other than that, some better performance. Look at Uruguay here, for example. I have some friends that lives down in Uruguay. As you can see, it's actually gained to the US dollar. It's strengthened. Same with the Costa Rican. What is their currency? Colon, not colon cancer. But yeah, so we got that. So you have the clone and then the peso. The Peruvian, what's the Peruvian currency? Nuevo Sol. So that must be like a new currency that they implemented. Let's see here. I can't really see. This might have been when the old Sol was. I don't know exactly what's going on with the new Sol in Peru. Then we already said the real in Brazil is strengthened a little bit, and then I think it's the Dominican pound, Jamaican dollar strengthened, and barely the Trinidad and Tobago dollar, but I think those are backed up against US dollar. They might have, no, this is not, like, it might be some kind of peg here. As you can see here, there's a certain peg here on these to the US dollar, staying stable. Okay, next we're gonna go to Asia. This is still US dollar to other currencies. As you can see here, the rupee in Sri Lanka has lost tremendous amount of value. The Laotian, what's it called? Kip has lost a huge amount of value, half of its value. Pakistan rupee, like all these countries here, if they have US dollar denominated debt, think about losing that much purchasing power and then having to pay back the debt. Some of these have to, pay back double of what they had with their local currency, and then they might have to print it in order to be able to sell. And then you get a massive inflationary event when the government has to print it, and then people stop trusting it, and then they lose, trust in the currency, and then it fails. Basically, that nobody wants to use it. They're just trying to get rid of it as fast as they can get it into their bank account and their incomes, and then they try to find other ways of doing trade and so on because it's worthless. Like who would want to, get a salary where you have $20? Let's say you get paid $100. And then, within 2 weeks or so, suddenly that $100 is worth $50, or, well, that's a little extreme, but let's say even $80, right? When you try to like purchase something to keep some form of purchase power, like in Turkey, for example, they've gone to used cars. They've been buying a whole bunch of used cars for wealth preservation. Now, I would assume that they have some form of gold and so on there. Like a lot of countries are central banks are buying gold, and also people, because you can see in other currencies than the US dollar, gold has gained tremendously in value. It's staying like kind of slow, like it's a little bit of a gain to the US dollar, but it's really like has shown its true colors and protected people in a lot of these countries that we see here that are suffering from heavy inflation. Even heavier than we've seen, like both the US and Canada, we've seen tremendous amount of inflation. Look at the Afghans. They're doing well. Taliban is in a deflationary state here. Very interesting. Look at how solid the currencies. Like this is the Armenian dollar, I believe. Is this the Georgian lek, or what the heck do they have? Lari they have in Georgia? As you can see, it held a lot of value. Um, and then the Tajik currency, Iranian rial, kept a little bit of value. Burundi, just I don't know if that's dollar or something else. Gabonese currency, and then several that are kind of like just basically, Lebanese pound is fried. North Korean, yeah. So a few currencies here that, yeah, there's not really too much to talk about in official numbers. These are official, of course, so the black markets could be like completely different. And I've gone through that in great detail before when I did reports with Josh, like showing the difference between the actual black market and real, exchange traded rates that you see official from the government, of course. In Australia, what is this now? This is the CP franc. This threw me off here. What is CP now? What is the country? Is that? That's hard to tell. Yeah, we'll skip that one, guys. Papua New Guinea currency has stayed pretty stable. Both of the Australian and New Zealand dollars has lost value to the US dollar. And then we go to Africa. It's really starting to struggle here now. Been demolished again. The current attempt, and it's funny they call it Zim dollar, and they should probably not have named it that, but the RTGS is not doing well over in Zimbabwe with a new inflation. When you get on that plane, the inflationary train, you got countries like Argentina, serial defaulters, Angola, serial defaulters, Venezuela, Sudan, many other countries as well that just serially misusing. Sierra Leone, their currency is just garbage to, doing trade with. Same with the Ghanese currency. This is huge because Ghana is not a tiny country. So you can see here, it reached a peak back in November. I think we probably looked at it then, but then it's gone down quite drastically, but it's still up again. If you go and look of a 10-year chart here, it was 1.68. Now it's 9.8. So just an insane amount of loss in value on that currency to the US dollar. You got the Egyptian pound has lost an insane amount. And this probably because commodity prices are insanely up. South Sudan, look at this. This is, I think, Sudan. Then we got Malawi's currency. Like, look at all these African currencies that are dependent on, I think, wheat and so on. And this is where I believe a Arab Spring could come into place. And I'm actually going to show, I think I created, yeah, I did create a chart of the food inflation, official food inflation, because yeah, there's one, the CPI. It doesn't a lot of times account in many countries for the food inflation enough, especially in poor countries. Heavy food inflation is detrimental for people being able to feed themselves. So let's go down there. There's so many currencies that we can look at, but these are not the biggest losers, right? Like we mentioned here. So the best performing is the Angolan. Uh, is it Kwanzaa or what did they call it? Yeah, still the Kwanzaa. Yeah. Because I have I think two pairs of misperforming, two pairs of hyperinflations from Angola. You got the Guinean franc and the Seychelles currency has stayed strong. Somalia's currency, whatever that is, and then the Algerian currency, that's oil. That has something to do with that. Yeah, so that's it for currencies. Let's go to the stock markets and see how well our great stock markets produced. We're gonna skip, just ignore these for now. We're gonna hit them right away. The three main exchanges in the United States. Right now, we're gonna take a look at the European markets. Who are the best performers? Well, are they really good performers? Let's see here. Okay, so we just, looking at a year-over-year rate. I'm just skipping the monthly right now because this is more interesting, the year-over-year, since we, right in the new year, it's 3rd of January as we speak. And there's, very interesting to see where all these assets perform during year-over-year. So that's what we're looking at. Look at the great performance of the Turkish lira stock market. Yeah, it's that does not necessarily mean that it was performing great. It just means that it's worth a lot more because the currency is worth trash. Uh, Starting to anyways, and they're starting to take measures to try to get away from that. The monarchs in this is, oh, where's that? Oh, that it's in not in Moldova. Is it Moldova maybe? Let's see, I just gotta click on it here. So I'm not, oh, Montenegro stock market has skyrocketed because their currencies collapsed in there as well. The Bosnian, and the Cypriotic one is very interesting here. As you can see, let's take a look at it further. Yeah, as you can see here, this was the peak here in 2008. So yeah, as you can see, there's nowhere, like, look at the loss here, guys, like on the Cypriotic Stock Exchange for the massive bubble in 2007 that then blew up. Banks, I think it was around here, they blew up because of bad bets. The banks, like, I think they blew up right around here, 2011, wasn't it? In Cyprus, or 13. Oh, it was 13. So basically, it took a couple of years from, like, look at this. It was 5,897, and then now it's 90. It's like nothing, guys. That's pretty insane. So even though it went up 33%, if you had it over a 20-year time frame, you would have, well, probably a 20-year, but if you invested around, let's say, like 2007 versus now, you had lost a tremendous amount being at a stock exchange. You got the Portugal stock exchange, yeah, it's up a little bit. Same with the Greek. The Danish is slightly up. This is year-over-year numbers, of course. Oslo is barely up, like, versus inflation in Norway is atrocious. So that's a terrible performance. Same in Britain as well. Heavy inflation, but stock market is that much. You lost a tremendous amount if you have a lot of money in stocks, in the general exchanges, anyways. If you had it in, let's say, ETF fund here at, British Stock Exchange, the FTSE, I think it is. And then you have here's, I believe, is this Slovenia or Slovakia? This is Slovenia, Belgrade Stock Exchange. Yeah, so they performed just above zero. And then, of course, it's all these. Like, let's start at the bottom here. Let's skip some of the ones in the middle. got to remember that inflation is double digits in most of Europe, and a lot of them, a lot of pensioners had moved their money because they had negative interest rates in most of Europe, so they'd move their money over to stocks, and then they get hit tremendously with, a loss here in many countries. Like look at Germany, you're down 12% on top of having 10% inflation. It's just atrocious what has happened there, and then on top, like now, the barely you have positive yielding bonds that people might get into, but he's still losing an insane amount to inflation numbers that are way, way higher than anywhere else. Look at here as well, Italy, Belgium, Helsinki, Tallinn, Bulgaria. This is the Swiss, we got Credit Suisse are really struggling. People, I posted something that, when they were bottoming there, I think at, what was the price? Let's go in there and quickly look at one of my favorite banks, no, not Deutsche. Yeah, that's one of them, anyways. But the other one is Credit Suisse. And as you can see here, let's just pull it out the all time to make a little bit of so you can see, the tremendous amount of loss there. If you invested in 20 at the peak here, you lost all your money basically. Let's go back here. But as you can see here, it's stagnating now down at the bottom. Right here, I posted a thing that, this is horrendous. What's going on there? Then it jumped here and people was like, oh, I gained 10, 15% of my trade. But then like, let's say if it was there, what is that peak? That's 3.1. And then now it's at 2.94 again. So if you held it for a bit, and if you didn't trade it on a regular basis, you would still start. So that's because that's one of the worst struggling banks. In Germany, there's a few banks as well. You know what? Let's quickly go into that since we're on it. Might as well give you guys some tiny little bit of detail into some of the markets. Let's go and see here. The biggest losers year over year is in Germany. HelloFresh is I don't know where they're from. If are they a UK company or are they actually from the US? Puma, not so much. Let's see here. You don't see Deutsche Bank actually doing that bad. I don't know if we can see even Raiffeisen there, which is the second biggest bank. They tried to merge those two banks to save Deutsche. Yeah, here. So Deutsche's year over year only like 4.96. But again, like if you look at, yeah, it looks pretty okay here. But again, like, yeah, they're not doing fantastic. Look at where they were at, right? On the all-time highs back here. So if you did invest for the long term and had a whole bunch of bank stocks, you wouldn't do too well. So yeah, so back here, let's pull back to where we're at and look at the biggest losers. The biggest loser is Moscow Stock Exchange. Look at this, 43.93% down. You got Austria's stock exchange down 19. They had some of the biggest inflation actually. So this is just horrendous. Like what is happening? Iceland, all these stock exchanges, people's savings are evaporating. There's a chart. I don't know if we can find it throughout our time here, but about $30 trillion have been lost in global stock markets right now. Just atrocious. Again, best performers are the ones that have insane inflation. So not necessarily a great performance on the stock market, of course. But as you can see here, it's, Venezuela, you got the Merval in Argentina, the Chilean exchange, which is what it's called, Santiago Stock Exchange, which is actually probably I would assume very commodity heavy. So that might be why it's actually up quite a bit. You've got Ecuador. The Ecuadorian one has performed quite okay this year over year. You've got the Peruvian has barely made, and then Brazil has been in zero. And then at the worst end of it, it's not the third world countries here. No, it's the United States and the Nasdaq. Look at the Nasdaq. It's one of the worst performing. The only one that's worse than the Nasdaq is actually the Moscow Stock Exchange. So, America's attacking Russia in Ukraine. You can say all you want, oh, it's Ukraine-Russia thing, but it's basically, the United States have been wanting, and the Western countries have been wanting to take them out for a long time there. And then what has happened is that you have tremendous losses here in the United States here. Like all of them are almost at the bottom. Same with Canada's. And on top of that, you have inflation. And then now bond rates are, 4.75 in the US. And then you have in Canada, I think 3.25. let's look at that after. Let's do year wrap up and review, and then we'll go to and look at the news that happened, because the news have been pretty insane too. Again, Laos, remember the highest collapsing currencies, right? Like they're same here with their stock exchange drop, but not that much. So really bad for places like um, Lebanon, Laos, that have currency collapses. Uh, well performers, year over year, energy based places like the United Arab Emirates, and what is this now? Oh my goodness, sorry for. Sometimes I do forget the Muscat, Oman, which is also oil based, of course. Um, Market. So you see those are, upper, the Sensex and Nifty is barely scratched by, but they actually have been lost, but still inflation have just eroded. So for everybody, inflation is just horrendous. Even though that stock exchanges have been up, maybe if you were lucky in these, sat in these, which not many probably is, you would have, gained quite a bit. But well, not quite a bit, probably barely just scratched zero. Um, Buffett just like his was a Berkshire Hathaway was up 4% this year over year. Well, inflation was a lot more, so he actually lost too. The best performer lost. Like it's who loses the least ever had. I think my portfolio was at my stock portfolio that I had was at 0.73 year over year. So I barely scratched by, but I didn't lose anything, which is good. Like compared to what you see here, if you were heavy invested in banks, you would have lost your shirt right now, like 50%, I think almost. You'd be down 30, 35, maybe something. So not very good. Look at China's completely, collapsed. Their stock exchange, the gold's got a gigantic debt bubble like many other countries here. Um, and then we look at the worst is the Hanoi stock exchange. So maybe that's why Apple just moved. Like I think they announced it in October, was it, of this last year, 2022, that they were going to move their production from their Foxconn death camp, down to Vietnam there. Look at here, for example, Sri Lanka is just utterly dismal performance versus they have an insane inflation, so that's not good. All of the Australian exchanges have lost tremendous amount of value, not so much than the US, of course, because there's a little bit of commodity based here, not New Zealand. They're more real estate based and finance based. But in Australia, you can see that they stayed a little bit stronger than everybody else, even though they lost a bit as well. And on top of that, inflation again. You have Zimbabwe again, top performer, but also worst performing currency. So it nulls it out, null and void. You got the Egyptian stock exchange is up tremendously, but their currency loss way more than that. Nigeria as well had high inflation, so barely scratching by, right? Tunisian stock exchange. This is interesting. I did not see the Tunisian currency misperforming that well. The Gabonian currency exchange. No, is this no Botswana? Sorry. Uh, Stock exchange. The Gaborone has performed quite well actually. Um, the Namibian stock exchange has just been above zero. So a lot of like outskirts type of places that not a lot of people probably have their money in have been performing quite well without the currencies collapsing, which many of these top performers have, of course. You got Ghana, uh, Kenya, you got Uganda's exchange, 15% here. Morocco stock exchange 20% down. This is Nairobi all share. Yeah, so quite horrendous performances. Let's go and look at commodities and see how they're doing year over year. Some of them have done well, some of them have not done so well. Now, of course, we had like a lot of these, as you can see, gas, like it's down, but it's still up an insane amount. I think like 600% at least. There's natural gas, but again, top producer of year over year is coal, heating oil, uranium has done quite well. Now, this here you can see like now are not many though, like currencies are beating inflationary pressures. because we're, have deflationary pressures and global recession on our hands. So they're not performing that well either this year. Just a few, as you can see, coal, some well, dirty coal. Yeah, I actually did not have any coal um, stocks, unfortunately. That's too bad. I had some, of course, gold and oil and other nickel, copper, those type of minerals. But yeah, they just scratched by. They haven't done too well. Lithium I did though. So that's I think it's a Cydad from Chile that did very well. So I think it performed like I think 50% or something it was year of year. Titanium did also okay. Platinum, you can see silver managed to scratch above zero, but didn't beat inflationary pressure. Iron ore as well, just barely scratched above. Steel got hurt pretty bad, as you can see here. Copper got hit quite a bit as well with the deflationary and recession pressures. Potatoes went up quite a bit. Orange juice, rice. You can see cheese here went up double digits. Milk, corn, soybeans, sugar, and then we're at zero here with wheat. But wheat has gone up an insane amount already from where it was. Like, look at this, because this comes down to, like, I have a chart of food inflation, but this is the Arab Spring 2.0 you had, the peak here. This was really like the big pressure here that created the Arab Spring. Again, there's a lag time of probably 2-3 years that really, like, when it really starts to hurt with the inflation on their pressures on those nations. So what you're looking at here, let's go further down. So that's at zero, and then let's go to the bottom. Lumber has collapsed, which, it's good. I'm gonna be building some stuff. So let's hope that it, goes down a little bit further. That'd even be better. The prices of lumber have started to go down a bit now as well, which is good, but nowhere near the bottoms that it was, during COVID, before it started to go up, of course. Cotton, oats, coffee, rapeseed oil, and rubbers all lost 24%, so quite a bit pressure there. The top producers of industrial metals are nickel, which I hold a nickel miner, but it hasn't performed well. Actually, my nickel miner has a negative return of -20, I think. It's nowhere near majority of my portfolio, but yeah, so like even though that nickel was year over year, I probably got in at a wrong time. With timing, it's fine because I'm in for the commodity cycle on my stock side. I got crap pulp, tellurium, bitumen uh, is all double digits. Then it's soda ash, molybdenum, and urea ammonium. But then you start to see, like, this is the industrials, that drives the economy. As you can see, most of them are losing. Big ones, of course, is iron ore, zinc, aluminum, cobalt is, the big one for, uh, if they're going to get their green revolution in batteries and so on. Polyvinyl, tin, urea, magnesium, you can see them dropping. But again, especially urea was an insane amount up. Aluminum, is a big industrial metal. So these are telling us that we're heading towards a global recession. This is the farm produced food. Now, as you can see here, the eggs, they keep on going up. And this is, in my point of view, I think it has to do with them killing off all these birds. Look at this. You're down here. Like, where were we at last year here? Let's just look at last year, January. Well, just a year ago, yeah. So about here, so you can see where we at there, 1.47. As you can see now, that's almost 300% up. So very much, but I think it's that they're killing off the birds because of so-called bird flu that is attacking them. So we got to murder all the birds. Salmon from Norway is up, poultry is up, cattle is up, hogs is down, Chinese eggs are down. As you can see, I guess they haven't killed off all their birds. Beef is down 10%. It's not bad. I like my beef. Yeah, and that's so that's it for commodities. Let's go to the bonds and see how they're doing. Let's just look at the 10-year. There's let's look at Europe actually. Who's the best performing bonds? Bulgaria. No, the worst. Yeah, the best so-called performing bonds. As you can see here, Norway and everybody's up. So again, nowhere near though what they need to perform at. Like 6% in Bulgaria is nowhere near their real inflation rate, and 3.75 is not going to get you too far with 8 to 9% inflation last year. So you've seen that you lose in there even holding the bonds. Let's look at the bond curve of the United States, our main one. The most important, of course, in markets. And as you can see here, the yield is the 10-year is inverted with the 4-year. Where the 10-year is basically inverted with everything, including overnight rates, which is pretty insane. It's not a good sign, to say the least. So yeah, so that's bonds. Let's go to crypto. As you can see here, crypto again. There's a few that are collapsed. Look at Solana now is near its deathbed here. Algorand as well. Avalanche is struggling. Polkadot, Cardano, all these were like housed as huge project. This is just like a breakout, the fork of Bitcoin itself. Let's look at the bottom. Who's done the best? These are, of course, stable coins, which has also lost value. This should be down 15%. Tether and DAI. Monero has actually performed the best, and Litecoin, and then Bitcoin up here. So very interesting, to see these currencies are holding stand because the smaller base people are using it for a reason, for utility of it. Bitcoin is big for investment, but also for wealth preservation. But as you can see, they actually Ripple lost less than Bitcoin, and also Binance, competitor to Ethereum. Ether has lost a lot, as you can see as well. So again, let's look at Bitcoin to other currencies. This is a little bit interesting. As you can see here to the Argentinian peso, it's lost least, but it's still lost, as you can see. And that happens in all the other currencies as well. Here as well, as you can see, the Norwegian krona, so on. It lost the most to the strong currencies again, as we went through the markets. Now, I'm gonna go into a couple of things. Let's just look at interest rates here. This is the G20 right now. And as you can see here, let's go to the last. Brazil, like Argentina, is trying to fight inflation. Brazil has high interest rates, trying to fight the inflation there. Mexico as well. Turkey, Russia. Turkey is nowhere near. They need to hike their interest rate to these levels. What Argentina is doing to have any impact whatsoever. Russia, yeah, none of these are near inflation. They're real inflation numbers. Many of these countries. Canada's 4.25. It's gonna really get whacked really hard because we got such massive debt levels. The US is at 4.5 right now. Yeah, and Australia 3.1 and so on. Okay, so what we're gonna do, let's see here. Yeah, here we go. Let me just show you food inflation. Then we're going to go into all these articles that we have. That's the year review for all these currencies. As you can see here, this is food inflation. Look at Hungary. Hungary is considered a semi-first world country. Look at that inflation. 47.1. That's, your food is almost, you know, um, yeah, it's gone up 50%, which is ridiculous. Like, and this is spread out, measurement too. It's not like certain things. As you can see here, we're still at 30% here. 20% is even horrendous. The euro, like United Kingdom, 16% food inflation. Honduras. The European Union in general is 17.86. Portugal is almost 20. You look at, there's Germany at 21%. Serbia 22, Chile 24. Like all these countries here, like up here, they're gonna struggle because a lot of them are poor countries. So food, when it goes up, it's has a lot to do with their stability of just surviving. You can see Laos, like a lot of the currencies that we talked about have these higher inflation. Turkey here, doubling in food prices. Argentina almost as well. Same with Iran. Sri Lanka is very high as well. Then we got Venezuela, it's just atrocious. Same with Lebanon, and of course Zimbabwe is topping at 300. Like that's just atrocious. Like if you have a salary that you're relying on, or if you had life savings, you're done. You're basically completely done. There's nothing left to say. Okay, so let's go to the news and see what's going on. So these are news for the last month. So some of them are a little bit behind, and some of them are up to current, the later ones that we're going to show. But I just want to show you, some important news that happened since, the last video that I did. And this one here is Blackstone's credit fund reaches withdrawal limit. So people have withdrawn too much. They're not allowing more people to withdraw. So they're in trouble. Nigeria limits ATM withdrawals to $45 a day. So basically, you got they're trying to implement the what do you call it, the digital Nigerian CBDC, the Naira, but again, they're having capital controls, $45 a day. You're able to take out in cash. So because banks don't have cash, if you take out cash, banks goes insolvent. Very easy math. So this is what happening in Nigeria with and this was back in December 2008. They're working on of course, their era. And so there only 1 out of 200 Nigerians use the era. So that what would that be percentage wise? That would be 1%. 1% would be 2. Then it would be 0.2 would be 0.1%. No, 2. Yeah, so it's 0.05% of the populace, which is good. It's a good sign to see that nobody wants to use the digital enslavement grid. So we can only have our hopes up to see that. I don't know what the numbers are now, if they changed drastically or not. I don't have the latest numbers, but this is quite good actually. But again, that you got the $45 a day in capital controls. That the previous limit of withdrawal was $350 a day US. That was. So that was 150,000 naira. So as you can see, yeah, and weekly cash limits. So they have limits. So pure capital controls, that's what countries do when they're in trouble, when their banks are collapsing and in trouble. They put in capital controls to hinder you from, creating bank runs and so on. Goldman Sachs is, on a little bargain hunt lately, looking to see if crypto exchanges, if they want any of them. The crypto exchanges are just like banks, and that's why, you had the FTX fail and so on. Here's this is from December. You had a hedge fund. Let's see here what the authorial trading got. Is that the hedge fund? I think authorial trading. And this is an Australian hedge fund. Basically defaults on $36 million of debt. It's a lot of deflationary pressure with like the FTX collapse. Is so much more than just FTX. Like it's everything around it, like the whole cryptoverse, but also regular finance is involved in this, and we'll see regular finance, banks coming soon. And we'll see some very, a little bit, what do you call it? Some regulators that are laughing at us. With other words, when it comes to banks and safety of banks, we're going to get into that soon. FTX crypto fraudsters targeted poor black neighborhoods in PR lobbying effort. Like this is again, what the hell is there? Lightfoot there, Lori Lightfoot, scumbag of a mayor in Chicago, and of course you can see her hanging out there, and they're doing the same thing as, of course, they had was it FTX headquarters in May, so that was in Chicago. That's hilarious. But anyways, this is the same that they did with the during the crisis in banks as well. They came after and went after poor people. I don't know how much the poor white was attacked, but yeah, again, this is again, this virtue signaling, but then destroying people that are poor, making them poor, kind of thing, stealing their money. Terrible scheme. Interesting, we talked about coal, right? But first UK coal mine in decades approved despite climate concerns. Well, it's because coal prices are up 125% and supply and demand, right? To get the price down, you need more supply when the demand is high because people are freezing to death in Europe. If you're interested, I'm going to post this in my link, in the link below, so you can see here, what is available of current investment, like the whole FTX, what they have around for assets in different places. Like, look at this Genesis, the Bitcoin exchange could be in some serious trouble there. Sequoia Capital, like you can see all the investors there. So if you're interested and want to dig quite deeper, this is Exodus. I have an Exodus wallet. As you can see, this wallet, invested 50 million because they raised capital through one of their tokens, which is the Exodus token. So very interesting. Gotta have your keys. If you don't have your keys, you're screwed. But yeah, go through here and take a look at this. Like I'm not gonna spend any time going through all these different investments in FTX and who was the worst losers there. But as you can see, there's some gigantic losers that we're probably gonna see more of collapsing if they haven't collapsed yet. Especially the smaller ones. That's there. Not the Sequoias and so on. They're too big to have an impact, of course. But they did make the investment. Great due diligence on their side. Biggest Wall Street banks are slashing bonuses as much as 30%. So we're seeing that happening. We have Apple. So yeah, we talked about this, that Apple supply Foxconn to invest 300 million more in Northern Vietnam because they're trying to de-Chinify, but it's not I don't think it's enough to like really move themselves out of China, but divest themselves a bit from China. Trouble ahead. Like, I can't look into this, but I thought it was a fitting title. Trouble ahead for shadow banking juggernaut. And this is, of course, from Private Debt Investor. I was featured there one time with my derivatives chart that I have, and I could show you that at the end if you had time, if I remember it. But they are saying that shadow banking juggernaut. So you're going to see a lot of more of these shadow banks. It's not necessarily just what FTX did and so on. Home Depot, Starbucks, all these guys that have credit cards or some sort of finance or currencies, like in Canadian Tire and Canada, like they're all shadow banks in some point of view, some way or another. You've got Bank of Canada. Yeah, so this we just talked about the interest rate in Canada. It's I think it's 4. No, it's 4.25. So now I'm getting like from people themselves tell me that they're starting to almost like struggle to pay their mortgages here. They're seeing severe because people had, especially the people on variable, are suffering right now. Now there's going to be people like me that are going to renew it and then get hit, almost with a double. I think I'm looking at a payment on the mortgage that I have. Luckily, I have, I'm 40. I think I'm 40% loan to value now, so doing a lot better than some people that are up with insane mortgages, and then you're looking at going from, like, let's say 2,000 to 4,000. That's, think about that. That's pretty severe, and we're going to see tremendous crisis coming from that. That is going to be delayed because you have 1, 2, 3, 5-year terms on these mortgages. And when they come due, you're going to see just waterfalls of debt collapses. Like, it's going to get pretty nasty over the next 2 to 3 years now. Canada proposed their overhauling foreign investment rule to tackle security risks. Well, this is more like capital controls, in my point of view, what they're trying to do here in Canada to make it probably harder for Canadians to move money out as well. Court rejects bid to release funds from the Freedom Convoy organizers, which is hilarious. That was actually like, think of, like if you denied, people to donate to a cause, like, the Heart Foundations. I know we're just going to take your cash and not give back to you. people would be a little bit outraged about that. Here we got Feds shore up CBDC, which is Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, future funding from tech giants, but block Kremlin-based media from the C-18 bill. More slush money to the mainstream media, because like even with all the 600 million that they gave them in both tax rebates and some funding, wasn't enough. We got to give a lot more. I think was it 1.2, 1.3 billion dollars that they fund CBC with, and nobody really cares about them or watches them. It's hilarious. This one is interesting here. This guy saying we'll all be working at McDonald's soon. GPT. So this is the new AI that Google has come up with, chatbot, and basically you could talk to it and make it do a whole bunch of wide array of things for you. This guy's pretty knowledgeable about it, so I want to share this. Like, he says, GPT-3 users understand exactly what is coming. Here's why. GPT chatbot is taking the internet by storm, racking up 1 million users after going live just 3 days ago. The AI responds to simple text prompts and answers questions, writes codes, spits out rap battles, generates poems, and authors stories. It's not hard to see where this is going. So copywriters are gone. He says client services are gone. Programmers are gone. All the people at Google might lose their job over this. You see the hamburger. Yeah, they're talking about how. So pay close attention to this chatbot, the GPT-3. I haven't had time to use it yet. I should, learn a little bit about it and start using it. It would be very interesting to see what capabilities it has. Semi-sentient AI, you can call it. It's starting to get pretty crazy. And so it'll be very interesting to see where we're a year from now when this gains a lot of steam, because people don't want to do anything. So let's just use our AI to do anything for us. We don't have to think anymore. We just like basically makes people a lot dumber, in my humble opinion, anyways, because people just spit that out and then they just want something back and they don't care about how it got there, why, or and so on. Let's look at other stuff. Our disabled Canadian Army veteran and Paralympian blast government here in Canada for offering euthanize. And this is the MAID, MAID. Yeah, here we go. What is it called? Medical assistance in dying, that Canada's introduced. I don't know if they pulled it out again, and then they're probably going to reintroduce it soon again because it was so controversial. Because several people was actually like, "Hey, you're poor, you're suffering from mental illness. I'll just go and kill yourself. It'd be way better for a planet, anyways." When are we going to get to that point where we're like, "Hey, just offer your life for the planet. You're being martyr. It'd be great." Um, more on that side, France bans short-haul domestic flights because of climate change. There here is banning short-haul domestic flights when there is a regular and frequent train option that takes less. Yeah, so if there's a train, take the train instead of the flight. So it takes half third of the time with the flight, but then you have to take the train. Yeah, screw you peasants. Uh, Here's an interesting thing that was just recently out, like this from the Harvard Business Review from November 30th. Inflation is painful for firms, customers, employees, and society. But careful study of periods of hyperinflation point to ways that firms can adapt, particularly to companies that need to think about how to change prices regularly cheaply, because constant price changes ultimately be very, very expensive. And they should consider how to communicate price changes to customers. Providing clarity, predictability can increase customer trust and help firms in the long run. So it's like, yeah, just you're going to see a hyperinflation, basically, the Harvard Business Review and World Economic Forum saying, so you might as well prepare for it. Interesting article there. Why central banks are stockpiling gold. This is an article from the Economists. Nobody really cares about them anymore. But as you can see here, bullion. There's a huge rack up in investment of bullion. And as you can see here, there's been a net positive since 2011 there. 2010. Tiny little bit of a negative actually, just during, and this was because some countries had to liquidate their gold probably during COVID lockdowns, during the government lockdowns. And as you can see here, but look at this, it's skyrocketing. So central banks know that something is coming and it's not good. Here's, a new one. This is the uh, Central Bank and Supervisors Network for Greening the Financial System. So NGFS, it's an NGO that sits on top of these central banks, telling them how to be more green. And climate, this is a report from the Financial Stability Board that runs everything in the world, basically, when it comes to finance and regulation. And they came out with a initial findings and lessons for, these central bankers that's out there, what they could do to adapt to climate scenario analysis and what by jurisdictions and so on, what they could do. So this is reports that are coming out just recently. Summer sees 6% terminal rates and avalanche risk and collapse. Yeah, 6% Fed rate. Yeah, it's gonna be very, very bad for you. Let's just leave it at that. And Lawrence Summers, is the guy that attacked people for saying that derivatives were bad, like Raghun Rajan, which joined the elites after he called it, and then after Lawrence Summers called him a Luddite when he warned about CDOs that were collapsing. 11 years after toppling Gaddafi, UK gets Libya's oil. Yeah, so they got the oil, and then I think they're still in the hidden in the at the Federal Reserve, all the gold that Gaddafi had that he wanted to create a gold-backed currency together with other African nations. Yeah, let's just steal. Basically, they bombed them to death and destroy the country. Now it's just like a complete cesspool of crime and human trafficking and all kinds of terrible things happening there. But the UK gets part of the oil and the US has some gold. Screw. Let's talk about Russia and Ukraine. I'll talk about this. Uh, Russia quietly assembles shadow fleet of tankers to sidestep Western restrictions. They're also going to ship it to others, send it to others, and then they're going to refine and sell it back to us. It's such a sham, this whole thing. It might be part of a bigger scheme, and we're going to look at that, what Moscow is doing, for example. COVID, says it's former Wuhan-based scientist says that COVID is man-made. And this is Andrew Huff, actually. And you can go to his website if you want to know why. He just had a big interview, whistleblower interview with Alex Jones and InfoWars. As you can see here, Fauci ran gain of function operations in Wuhan. And Andrew G. Huff was, I think it was vice president of EcoHealth Alliance, which, you had Peter Daszak, that was the CEO, went down there to check and make sure that, was this a leak or was it from the market? And of course, he came to the conclusion that it was from the market and not from his operations at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So that's interesting news. So you had the big whistleblower. You can check his webpage out there. I'm going to share in the link to the interview and so on. It's definitely worth hearing and what's going on. It was attempted, assassinated one or two times, I believe. But his name is Andrew Hoff, and he's a former intelligence guy. So that's the guys that are running this, because it's a lot of it's biowarfare and so on that they're dealing with, doing this kind of function stuff in these labs. Here we got critically ill baby temporarily taken from parents who refused blood transfusion over COVID-19 vaccine fears. Yeah, so if you refuse to get with the system and you may be afraid for your child's health, you're gonna lose your child. The government is gonna take them away from you, because the government, they raise your child, so they basically own your child. Against the backdrop of war, rolling blackouts, internet outages, Ukraine is trying to digitalize everything. Well, this is again, the whole, like, there's two high up. I forgot. I think it's a finance minister and digital minister or something. Right now, they're working on the e-Hryvnia, their CBDC over there as well. Meanwhile, the country's getting destroyed by war between two morons, Putin and Zelensky. And so what you're seeing is that they're following the World Economic Forum agenda. They had two recent two entries into the Young Global Leader program last year. Well, year 2022, that class, the latest class. So you're just seeing an ongoing push between elites in all these countries. World Economic Forum, is talking about the stickiness of the 50-minute city. And this, people should look this up. Like there's been a lot of things around the 50-minute city. Wonder how long this one is. I'm just going to do one more thing here, guys. Let's see if I can find the article. That like that tailored to this. Yeah, this is the one. But first, we're going to look at the 50-minute city. Let's see how long this is. We might just skip it a little bit and look at the most important parts, but it's worth looking at because it's happening several places around right now. This push for a 50-minute, basically, slave dome, like over your life that you can travel out, a bubble, basically, that you're stuck in. Let's look, yeah, that's 1 minute. Let's look at the whole thing. Okay, so let's just watch it here. Yeah, wouldn't it be great if everybody didn't travel anymore? They could lock down some peasants. Yeah, as you can see, Melbourne, biggest lockdown city of all was Melbourne during COVID, other than Chinese cities. Hyper-localization, the cluster effect of decided successive cities. You have them locked into slave grids of 50 minutes. This is fantastic. Think about what we could accomplish with sticking people into 50-minute cities that they can't travel outside of. They can never exit. They'll always be stuck there forever, thinking that there's nothing outside of it. Good times. Yeah. Global New Mobility Coalition is back in this. So very interesting stuff. But let's look at an old article. It looks like they put it back up. Like this article was taken down, and then now it's put back up again. But this is an article from the VB, what do I call VBCSD, and what is that now? We'll look at that in a second. But under a climate lockdown, governments would limit private vehicle use, ban consumption of red meat, and impose extreme energy-saving measures, while fossil fuel companies would have to stop drilling. To avoid a scenario, we must overhaul our economic structures and do capitalism differently. So this goes back to the whole wet dream of Klaus and all these with social capitalism, and of course that's where they want to go. No, shareholder capitalism it's called. We will all participate in a great where they have all the meat and everything, and they could do whatever they want. The rest is it's like Elysium, just on Earth for them. And the VBSD, let's just go and look quickly here at the VBCSD, they're called. We're gonna go and look at this next one here. What does it stand for now? Let's see if we can we actually get something that it tells us what it says? Yeah, here we go. World Business Council for Sustainable Development. The UN is here. Oh, of course, this is the ESG is here, the 17. If you see this pin anywhere, you know that they're a UN shill. And more on this side, it's CO2 emissions are mapped. I think Al Gore is a part of this project, but they're basically mapping, CO2 emissions here by places. Pesky Germans, as you can see, Americans and some Canadians. Look at these scumbags, emitting natural gas that everybody needs, like the trees need. Here you can see, they've been mapping it. I think with satellite footage, isn't it? But anyways, this is a part of, I think Al Gore is definitely a part of this and funding this projects like this, where they just now start to map and they want to have, basically in Norway, for example, they use GPS, basically like Google type satellites to look at, if people are building stuff that are not allowed, and then the government will come after them for building something on their property. So I think this is like where we're heading towards. They're gonna see CO2 upprint, footprints, and then come after you and tax you based upon what the satellite sees, probably. Switzerland considered electric vehicle ban due to blackouts. Now, here's the green agenda and totally failing, of course, as it is right now. This country is paying car drivers nearly $4,000 to switch to electric bikes. In France, they pay 4,000 euro if you swap your old car for a cleaner. Yeah, so let's say that you had like a 50,000 euro fancy car. It's like, yeah, just take your bike. You'll get 4,000 euros, and we'll just get rid of your car for you. Just wreck it or something, and you'll just take a $4,000. You'll be fine. Volkswagen says EV battery plants practically unavailable in the European Union due to soaring energy costs. We saw coal, for example, is massively up. Oil, natural gas to destroy the pipeline between Russia and Germany. But most likely the CIA was involved in that, probably. And of course, like that's totally destroyed. Even if the Russians did it themselves, maybe they did do it themselves to destroy, because Germany and Netherlands was so dependent on it, and their collapse. Like look at the UK, for example, as well. Just horrendous what is happening there. Germany bans farmers from fertilizing on land to serve EU's green agenda. Again, coming after everybody's lives and control over their own lives, and then telling us what to do because we need to consume and do less so they could control us better, and we have less people on this earth, basically. The Malthusian cultists, that are running. This is an interesting one. US blocks more than 1,000 solar shipments over Chinese slave labor concerns. Yeah, not that, maybe some of them are made, maybe they can just make solar panels from, solar, from, the prisoners that are working with slave labor camps in the United States. Might be better. Climate lockdowns, yep, they're actually going to go there. So again, read that article from the VBSD, VBCSD. Yeah, I think they're called. Read that article because that's where they're coming towards. That's their own thoughts. They're going to do the 50-minute city that we were showing you. How wrongful arrest based on AI derailed 3 men's lives. So basically, AI used facial recognition, and then wrong people got apprehended, and then they got their lives destroyed. And this big warning, because like AI is not fantastic, like it's not perfect, right? So just wait until they start to implement this on a gigantic scale. And what will happen? It's not a good place. Like I see with CCTV cameras and everywhere we're going now, like everything is starting to become more and more AI based. So artificial intelligence, like it recognize, it's called Dory, for example, as their scheme now of how it could recognize, a object, a car, and other stuff, like how close it can detect, facial recognition and so on. That's a rating on cameras now that are coming out. Philly or Fallujah, gas station owners hire militarized security as city imposes curfew. So yeah, so this is part of Philadelphia, where they actually have to have, yeah, basically they have to have, weaponized, militarized security, in order to protect their gas station from theft. New ITU case study shows maps the Moscow smart cities. I think it's ITU is the International Telecom Union. Not sure. Yeah, anyways, but this is a project, but this is from 2018 actually, guys, if you haven't paid attention to it, but it's a case study on maps, smart cities journey in from Moscow. Like there's lots of companies. There is Panasonic, Hikvision, Samsung, I believe. I also think Axis from Sweden has smart city grid as well. Like this is basically just a surveillance grid with a automation censorship grid on top of it. As you can see here, smart city strategies and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, blah blah blah. It's all about that and shapes smart cities. The case of Moscow. If you're like implementing ITU international standards to shape smart cities, sustainable cities, the case of Moscow. So they've been looking at that in Moscow as well. Everybody thinks that Putin is great and he's the anti, establishment. He's not. This is just a recent article from today. You can see Rasmussen poll shows that 1 in 4 Americans believe that they know someone who died from COVID vaccine. If that is true, that's deadly serious stuff that's going on with the vaccine and everything. Not very good. We know that there's a lot of issues with that vaccine in itself. Um, from middle class to boredom, it says here article from Norway talks about a poor old lady. She's 92 years old. She was, middle class, had savings and everything. But then, of course, as any middle class that had savings, in Venezuela and Argentina, wherever they were, their savings are gone because their currency's misallocation of capital and printing of currency. They're suddenly, is worth like zero to nothing. Then you're suddenly poor. And what are you going to do? And this is nothing new. This happens in all these countries. And of course, this poor 92-year-old lady, she's screwed right now because of all the prices of everything. Like, daughter, the daughter. Uh, she said her daughter should have had a oxygen machine to help her lung disease, but they don't have power. So as you can see that just like people die faster, and then of course it's perfect with the agenda as well. But Lebanon's pound is in a hyperinflate. It's completely collapsed. I haven't seen any reissuances of any higher denominated notes than their initial ones. So be interesting to see. I think their high denominated notes now is either 100 or 200,000 Lebanese pounds. And here we talked about it earlier as Turkish inflation is soaring. Turkey says they're successfully test payment transaction using digital lira. So they're coming on to the Central Bank of the Republic of Turkey, the CBRT, successfully tested its first transaction using digital Turkish lira. I don't know if they piggyback of somebody else potentially. They might because they're so late. But anyways, it's coming everywhere. The junk bond reckoning is coming in 2023 because of all the interest rates skyrocketed in 1 year. Well, not a lot compared to what it had before, but the fastness of it within 1 year versus 2 years during the prelims of the 2004 to 2006 rise, and then the ongoing 2007 to 9 crises and collapse in markets. Now you had a rise from 2020 to 2021 to 2022, and you might see then just a year or so ahead. If you look at how fast it happened versus how fast it'll happen versus 2008, for example. Junk bond. There's like I have. I should show you this at the end maybe, but my derivatives overview. There's so much debt right now that are sitting at triple B rated, which is basically right above garbage. And they had to bail them out during 2020, and then we'll see what's going to happen now. I think so. More serious things will happen. Let's go into some Epstein stuff here. Virgin Islands Attorney General loses her job after suing JP Morgan in connection with Jeffrey Epstein probe. Very interesting there. Yeah, don't touch Jeffrey Epstein and JP Morgan. Anybody remember the cocaine laden ship that was pulled into port that JP Morgan owned? That's pretty funny. Um, this one here, everybody should watch it. It's too long for it to show it to you, but basically this is an expert, Maria Gucci. She's basically an expert on quality of creating a pharmaceutical. I don't touch that garbage, but she's a quality insurance person that looks at all of it, and she goes into looking at Pfizer and says that yeah, this audit should be shut down for a long time ago with the risk. We got Beth Thumb, largest shareholder, company vice president, jumps towards a suicide. So it's more of the fallout, from certain articles about FTX, more crypto fallout as we're seeing, more scams, probably that was out there. Here we're going to look at some quick little meetings that the FDIC had, and this is interesting. You'll really get a good laugh out of this, where they just almost like making fun of the peasants, for believing that banks are actually solid. Here's one of the clips.
I wondered whether there are some market tests of whether you're being heard, and I think about TLAC.
Total loss absorption control, which basically means
spread
a complete
should respond
collapse
to
of a
good
bank.
and bad news.
And that was created by the FDIC,
and it's really important. I mean, it's a little bit conflicted, right? I mean, it's important that people understand they can be bailed in, but you don't want a huge run on the institution. But they have, I mean, they're going
to
be.
The peasants, in other words.
And it could be an early warning signal to the FDIC and the primary regulators when these things happen. And there may be some other prices. This is similar to what Jay was saying in the market, that you can tell whether people understand who's going to be protected, who isn't going to be protected.
Who will is the GSIB list.
I think an
global
interesting
systemically important banks by the
evolution of
FSB,
market
Financial
prices
Stability Board.
In a situation like
March
of 2020, for example, and see whether people understand.
He doesn't know who's going to get protected. We all know who's going to get protected, so don't play dumb. Okay, that was the first clip, and then let's look at the other clip here, which is very interesting as well.
It should be accessible when people need to know, but I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. They just assume.
Oh, look at the balance sheet of insurance company.
Right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences.
Yeah, people are stupid. Don't tell them nothing.
That has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do.
Right? We want almost started laughing there when he said that.
They know the FDIC insurance is there.
The FDIC doesn't have very much confidence in the banks. But
there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side. And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people that will charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out in the general public.
Oh, sorry, this one is out anyways. Little banksters. They talk about TLAC, total loss absorption control, I believe it is, and it's a part of the bail-in regime. Like, that's what happens. Bank goes into TLAC procedures, and this is the Financial Stability Board. You can look at total loss absorption control. It basically tells you what they do. Like, each GSIB should require to meet firm-specific minimums for TLAC requirements. So there's, the requirements of the total loss absorption control, and then there's, of course, the bail-in regime that they have in great detail. Like, this is a very big document that you can find, which I have links to if anybody's curious about this. It's called bail-in execution. As you can see, the link is popping up. Also pause and then put it up. I'm also going to put I don't have actually publicly available this presentation yet. I'm going to make a presentation on this right away on the Financial Stability Board. I did it for my friend David Morgan, the Silver Guru, for his subscribers, and I think everybody needs to know what's going on there and what these guys at the FDIC is talking about. Here's the bail-in procedures. When a bank fails, they're pretty far along here. As you can see, it's not just something that they put together that they have no clue about. This is what these guys at the FDIC is being told by the FSB. This is what you need to do, boys. And of course, you can look up in here like all the bail-in regimes. Canada was one of the first in 2013. I remember I was talking a lot about that back in the day, implementing this. And as you can see, many like FINMA and like the regulator in Switzerland was early as well. You had the Japanese regulators also talked about this, and it's called the what is it called again? Oh my goodness, recapitalization is another word for bail-in, by the way. If you heard that term, run. Anyways, okay, so let's look at a couple more and then we're gonna call it quits here. We've gone through a lot and it's taken a long time, but I think it's worth it. You know, here in Norway, for example, they have Rex Solar, which is one of the biggest solar producers that are basically funded by the government, is on the verge of collapsing right now. Again, this is the second collapse. They've been bailed out before. Here's an interesting one. Melinda Gates dropped bombshell about marriage with Bill Gates, discussion of friendship about abhorrent, evil Jeffrey Epstein in his first post divorce interview. So she talks about, and yeah, maybe she's trying to be a good woman here, so she could be the head of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I don't know. But you know, you got to remember that Jeffrey Epstein was very interested in eugenics and all that stuff. Like same with and eugenics is, uh, certain people from the Germans, like Germans from the 30s and up to the 45s, were interested in that as well, eugenics. Um, Next one here is hedge funds set to mark worst returns for in 14 years for 2022. The year 2022, they're talking about abysmal returns. And we kind of looked at, what the returns were in different asset classes. There wasn't many asset classes that didn't get pummeled, basically, and were near, like beating inflation. Like almost everybody lost. Not very many has won. If you had all your funds in coal, it did pretty well. But other than that, you've been pretty screwed. Um, Elon Musk announced this new Twitter science policy blast. Fauci cannot regarded as a scientist, which is hilarious. I think he talked about his pronouns, which was rest Fauci was going to be his pronouns, which is pretty funny. He's a big troll, Elon Musk, of course. And there's a lot of leaks. There's leaks about the CIA involvement with controlling what was posted, like CIA and FBI was involved, and there was people actually hired that sat on certain boards and at Twitter that if they don't like people, they delete you. Like what happened to me and Josh with World Alternative Media in 2018. Over YouTube, just be like, bye bye, see you later, when they don't like you. Credit crack widens with distressed debt ballooning. As you can see here, there's U.S. distressed bonds and loans. As you can see, it's actually gone up quite a bit. It's gone up about it's basically gone up 500% since January, which is interesting. So seeing a lot of that debt, distressed debt, that are starting to struggle, and we'll look at that in a second here as well. So yeah, we looked at this one. Let's go and look at another one here. Would this bring me back to my infogram? No, it won't. Okay, just 1 second here. We're gonna go into just find my infogram here for a sec. Go and look here. We're gonna look at one is the derivative. Like the news numbers we don't have any 2022 numbers yet that are available. But as you can see here, this is look at here, for example. This was the CDOs, that blew up in 2008. There, even at that time, the CLOs, which is collateralized loan obligations, which is corporate debt that are packaged. I posted this on LinkedIn many times, and I get hammered by certain people that sell this stuff that don't like what I'm saying, and saying that they're totally safe. There's no problems with the way they're structured versus CDOs. It's like, yeah, it's a little bit better, but still corporate debt is corporate debt and it's struggling. As you could see here, if you go and look at this is 2021 here. If you go and look at the difference, for example, in triple B rated debt, this is 2020 numbers. The 36.7 was the total of triple B rated debt in 2021. At the end of 2021, it was 40%, so it's increased. So A rated debt was 25. So you could see that all the good debt has been shrinking, and the bad debt has been increasing. Double B has actually not done much. Same with B. but then as you can see, it's increased with CCC and below. But as you can see, some of that debt like moved up, just barely up. So a little bit of it is, of course, that, but it's not much. As you can see, it's 0.6% or so. Oh, minus this. So yeah, so it's not much. Like it's actually increased the amount of just barely investable debt by big pension funds. And as you can see, who holds, the collateralized loan obligation? This is from the Federal Reserve's data. As you can see, 32.9% is insurance funds. Mutual funds holds 18.9. Depository institutions holds 18%. So you can see there's so much risk out there. We don't know exactly who's holding these collateralized loan obligations, but what I do know is that I looked personally at, I got from Refinitiv before, like I posted myself that I wanted to buy the tool. It's like a $5,000, a month from Thomson Reuters Refinitiv that you could actually go and look at all the data. So if you have $5,000 and you want to look at these collateralized loan obligations, what's risky or not, you can buy that from Thomson Reuters for 5,000 US dollars a month if you want to. But I got to look at the tranches and everything, the way they were set up, and you can see like all kinds of debt is in these tranches. They still have the tranches and still good and bad debt within those. And you're starting to see stress. There's people that are like Stephen Metry talked about the risks in the lower tiers of the ratings of that debt that are starting to show serious stress. Here we got the Toyota CEO warns a silent minority of automakers don't believe in electric vehicles. I could tell you that, the electric vehicle dream is not gonna happen in the way we believe. And if we do go that way, it's highly inefficient, what we have, unless we can find out some real magic things, throughout that time. I just want to point this article out that I wrote on October 12th, 2017. It's called The Federal Reserve Will Own Everything Then Nothing. Because the next QE that's coming out, and I believe that they might start buying stocks, ETFs, CLOs, all kinds of other assets. They're technically not allowed to buy all that stuff, but they might just use like the Exchange Stabilization Fund to create special purpose vehicles, which are corporations that they could put assets into and then just basically hide it off the balance sheets of these insolvent banks, for example, or institutions, like they're doing probably in the UK right now with the collapse of all their funds. Twitter aided Pentagon program campaigns across Middle East. Yeah, so as you can see, they were involved with social media and trying to push things in a certain direction. This is interesting. So I was looking at the young global leaders. I think for this year, for 2022, and one of the women that was here, I forgot her name. I don't know if it's her or not, but there's a new trade that is emerging from the crisping and gene modification and all this stuff. It is called immunoengineering, and it's basically creating vaccines and therapeutics that would change your immune system for the better, right? Of humanity, isn't it? And of course they're talking about SARS-CoV-2 and the whole like the vaccine itself, how it was basically immunoengineering. So keep that in mind, immunoengineering. You're going to hear a lot more about it as these scumbags create more of these tools and medications and gene therapies out there that are not vaccines. Bill Gross says that markets are headed for potential chaos if interest rates keep on going up. And this was on the 20th of December. So we had already I think the 4.5 hike up to 4.5 in the US. And if it goes higher, like you gotta remember, I think it was 2.75. It was last time when it collapsed down, when we had the repo crisis after and all this stuff, but they had to hike, push down the interest rate. Now they've gone up very fast compared to that time, and it only took up to 2.75 last time. Where is it gonna be at, like very soon now, like year or two from now, with this massive fast rate hike compared to the last time when it collapsed? As I said, it's going to be a little bit scary, and I think all this debt, $30 trillion is evaporated already. Where are we going to be at? Like this massive global deflationary pressure on debt, peak debt type of thing. Wells Fargo is at it again. They got a $3.7 billion settlements with the PB over consumer abuses. How many times I remember me and Josh, talked about this a lot. Wells Fargo, their insurance, fake insurance on things, their fake bank accounts. There's so many different scams that they were up to, totally looting and siphoning off money from their customers, of course. So Wells Fargo is a scumbag bank, and of course, good old majority, one of the majority owners, and after they started to become scumbags was after Warren Buffett initially, bought a big amount of them. Interesting news from, Bitcoin addresses tied to defunct Canadian crypto exchange Quadriga suddenly woke up and they transferred 100. So is he dead? Yeah, I forgot his name. The East Indian guy that ran Quadriga X out of Vancouver. But that was one of the big collapses here in Canada, which was tiny collapse compared to what FTX was. But a ton of people lost a ton of money here in Canada. Luckily, I wasn't part of that. I had at that time I woken up to self custody of it, our own bitcoins. But anyways, that's what we're looking at for the year. The year-end returns, the news at the end of the year, what's going on. There's a lot of things going on, and we better just prepare ourselves, guys, because we're heading towards a very interesting time, to say the least. And so I just want to hope 2023 becomes a year that you take maybe more thought into your finances, into resiliency in your own life to see, because a lot of people are saying that 2023 is going to be certain just hell on earth, which is pretty insane. I guess for the finance industry, that complete financialization, that's the last stage of a fiat currency collapse. And so you saw that, and then what you're seeing now is just the ramifications of that. And here in Canada, we see lots of inflation. You go out and barely buy groceries now for $100 kind of thing. So things are starting to get hit pretty severely here, and all these currencies, they're ending up like these guys. These are just current. There's a few over there that are quite current as well. Currencies that collapse, and it's a cycle that happens over and over again. When you hit that peak debt level where nobody can get indebted, then you need more to fill the Ponzi scheme. That's why Canada and Germany has massive immigration, because the demographic cliff, they're collapsing their debt levels because people are not reproducing. There's not enough debtors to feed the Ponzi scheme itself. You got to have people on the bottom feed the Ponzi scheme to make it work. So that is happening on a big scale in a lot of Western countries. That's why I see a lot of immigration. In my point of view, people say, "Oh, it's for voters." Yeah, I might have a tiny little bit to it, but I think most of it has to do with needing more debtors to feed the financial system and keep it alive, the current system. So that is happening. And so, just need to prepare yourself for a lot of things that are coming. A lot of friends that I have are preparing themselves by moving out of cities. They're getting chickens. Some friends of mine are buying, have beautiful cattle farms, certain places in the world, and they're just trying to get off the grid. Even locally here, I know several people that have moved off the grid that just don't want, to be stuck in a big city during a financial collapse. Look at what happened to Caracas and many other cities, during atrocities that are happening. Look at Beirut and all these other cities that are faltering, right? You don't want to be stuck in a city, especially in today's society in Western countries where you only have 3 days of food in a lot of these cities. You want to, have those supplies and available. And personally, I'm doing that. I want to build a few things to, become more resilient, like, alternative heating source, more bigger, ways of planting things um, at where I live and so on. And just you need to protect yourself. And of course, I buy precious metals as well on top of that to preserve my wealth as much as I can. And so I think 2023, 2024 is years to really take that seriously, because I think if you don't, there's a lot of problems coming, as you can see with the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, laughing at people saying that, we don't even trust the banks, but at least the stupid peasants do. They're laughing at you. Meanwhile, they're calling you stupid and so on. Meanwhile, there's basically looting and stealing for money, and we're going to see a lot of these bank troubles coming. So please protect yourself, guys, and make sure you check out my website, theeconomictruth.org. And I'm updating there. I'm putting up charts and economic data, and of course, check out my Odyssey and I'm on YouTube and Rumble with my The Economic Truth Report, which this is number 22. So stay tuned for a lot more of that through next year, and it's going to be quite the ride, I think. And so stay tuned, and we'll get through this together, guys. Have a wonderful new year, and let's prepare ourselves for the worst and hope for the best.